Good morning, everybody. So I'm Michael Baddeley, and I've got a little bit of an obsession. What I'm going to do today is talk through the Mark IV. It's the newest... Silence! Yes. Yes. Right, okay, so I'm going to talk through the Mark IV. It's the newest iteration or the newest design for R2-D2. I have not touched a lot of the CAD in R2-D2 for probably about 5-6 years. A lot of the things that are being built, the Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs, are like 4 or 5 years old. I've been playing with Chopper and lots of other droids. And it made sense to wander back to R2-D2 and do it complete justice, given everything that I've learned over the last 10 years or so of modeling. And just to give you kind of a bit of an example, this one in red is the Mark IV. And that one over on the other side was the Mark I. So I've started with the Mark I probably about 9 years ago. And it was a modified James Bruton frame from his R5, but made accurate. I then crazily did 3D printed skins. So literally the thin skins, and they were all cut into little tiny squares with no instructions that you had to sort of piece together and glue together. It was lunacy. The legs were actually laminated pieces that you stuck together. So effectively, it was technically a traditional build. All I did was print the plastic out. Obviously, things have moved on dramatically since then with the Mark II and Mark III. But what I've had done with the Mark IV is set myself about 8 impossible goals, which I'll kind of go through. What I'm delighted with, and I've got some examples which I'll send out, is the final print, the final kind of off the bed print. The quality of it is virtually at the point where we don't have to sand. I've warned all the people that manufacture sandpaper that so their sales may well go down from the from the people that build these things out of droids. But seriously, I know it's become more of a sanding hobby for those that 3D print than actually building. So I think that'll be wildly exciting for everybody involved. There's some pictures here of the legs. All of these pictures that are on there are raw prints, so none of them are painted, none of them are finished. They're literally off the bed. We've still got an open question on the guy that printed these legs here because they look phenomenal. I don't know what the silver filament that is used, but they're beautiful, beautiful print. These are some zoomed in images on the Mark IV body. Again, I'll go through the rules, but really trying to make everything so that it's not multi-part. You have to assemble, you have to get rid of seams, you have to glue, sand, and all that kind of stuff. It's literally, these are prints that are straight off the bed, and where possible, it's single print. So the utility arms there are a single print. And you can see also, I've tried to eliminate lots and lots of stepping. So the quality overall, I am absolutely delighted with. These are all printed on the bamboo. The bamboo is a next step up from a quality perspective as well. However, I've also printed them on things like Prusa's and some of the more traditional ones, and we're getting similar kind of similar finishes. So just share some of the pictures. You've probably seen some of these online. This is the complete assembled body. These are printed on a 250 by 250 bed. So these are multi-part, lots of joins, which you can't avoid when you're printing on that side of things. But again, what I've tried to do is make sure that those are not really an issue, not visible, and very, very easily fixable. You can see there's one join there near the coin slots, that little line, just to show you where some of the joins are, but we've managed to cover most of those. The other thing that I really wanted to do is get rid of masking. So masking parts off to paint parts. Again, it's a bit of a nightmare. Where we've got masking ones, let's multi-print, paint them, and then assemble them. So the ankle details, as you can see here, are printed in 2 parts, where this part slots inside that to produce the ankle point. So what you get is extremely clean lines, but no painting. And similar with side vents, this is just a straight off the printer, 2 colored materials, and effectively you can paint the back panel, and then you can just put the ribs on to assemble it. So what it means on all of these, I've got to kind of run through testing, and so I do end up with a couple of spare bodies. These are the quickest ones by far that I've ever printed and painted. mainly because I've not been sanding. I've just put a couple of coats of primer on there and then just bang the paint on it straight off. I'm not advising that you don't sand. There may be some lines and things that you want to take out. I just wanted to see what the quality was like without doing that. The other one that I'm kind of doing in the background is I just want to do a printed one in white and blue and silver, so we can see what the straight off the bed quality is without actually painting. Again, this is just me playing around and kind of experimenting. So I'm going to jump into the CAD, but before I jump into the CAD, I want to talk about the 10 impossible rules. So when I started to jump into Mark IV, there was some things that I was frustrated about, some things that I wanted to address, some things that I wanted to really stretch the boundaries of design so that we could play around with it. So rule 1 is the law of 35, which is thou shalt not overhang more than 35 degrees. What that means is it's technically 65 degrees. So if you've got a 45-degree angle, which is optimum for printing, you get to 65-degree overhang is where all printers will print it without any real issues. I tend to keep the 65-degree angle mainly on the back of print so that you can't necessarily, if there is any slight degradation in quality, it won't affect them. The other where I use that a lot is on panels where you've got panel cutouts. The upper one that's printing, if you put it at 35 degrees, you can't actually see that you put it at 35 degrees, but you get incredibly clean lines. The second rule was no stepping. I've tried to do it with no supports. I'm now moving on to I don't want stepping. These horseshoes, not horseshoes, what are these? Booster covers. These booster covers have been, if you print them flat, irrespective of what layer heights you get, you will always get stepping on these. So I wanted to eliminate stepping. I don't want any visible joints. So as I said, they're impossible rules. I haven't managed to achieve these, but these are what I've started out with. So what I wanted to do with the joints is make sure you couldn't see any of the joints. I wanted to get rid of sandpaper. Sandpaper is dead to me. Yay! Woo! Yeah, it's okay. So no more sanding where possible. And again, these are impossible rules. You'll still want to sand, but let's try and get rid of step in and layer height, layer lines, etc. The other one is masking. Yeah, if you need tape, you've already lost. We're not going to mask. What we're going to do is print parts out that go together, so we don't need to do any masking at all. Rule 6 is no special print settings. So where people are going, what's my infill? How many outer layers do I want? Should I strengthen the shoulders and all of this kind of stuff? Let's get rid of that. Let's make it so that you can just bang it on. The settings that you're happy with that give you the quality for it, just use it throughout the whole print. Don't worry about strengthening various bits and bats. Rule 7 is there are no multi-part assemblies except for paint. So the ones that I showed you where we put it together. With these, for example, in the past, there's been some cutouts for the back bits, and you had to kind of glue them all together in assembly. Similar with these. Let's get rid of assembly. So what you print off the bed is what you actually get. Rule 8 is built-in strength. So what we want to try and do is get it to a point where it doesn't matter what the print settings are, you can print it straight off and the strength is embedded within it. And where needed, there are things like steel rods in the legs, so we've got the strengths on there. So the 10 impossible rules that ended up without having a 9 and a 10, which I'm quite happy with that. Because that made my life a lot simpler, yeah? So these are the 10 impossible rules. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop into Fusion 360 just to kind of show a little bit of the design process and the actual modeling. Before I do that, what I'll do is I'm going to hand these around so you can kind of have a close look up at some of the quality of the print. These are printed in bamboo carbon fiber. So yeah, just chuck them out. I'll get onto this, but this is the shoulder hub. So where I said don't worry about the print settings, you'll see we'll see that on the shoulder hub. So the part that you've got in is just ones that I could fit in the suitcase. I couldn't fit the whole body, unfortunately, but just to kind of give you a little bit of a flavour on those. So what I'm going to start with is I'll just start with the main body. So let me just strip everything out. So the body is printed in 3 rings. They are either 250 mil cuts for the bamboos, or if you've got a really big printer, they'll print in 500 mils. So you print the same body depending on what printer. The only difference is really that you've got joints, obviously, for the 250. Now, if I zoom into some of the details that I mentioned, the law of 35. So if I just take a look into a real zoom up onto here, where you've got these panel lines, the panel gaps are all to spec and spot on. What I've done then is the orientation on this particular part is you print this bit flat to the bed, so it's printed upside down. So the law of 35 means that what you do is you get these incredibly smooth and clean panel lines, because it's not, although what you used to get is a little tiny bit of bridging, you used to get a little bit of droop, and we don't want any droop. So those now print completely clean. The coin slots, again, law of 35. So because it's printed on this side, you can see that the coin slots are individual now, and these are all stepped out at 35. Interestingly, when you assemble it, you'll see the orientation changes on the coin slots, because the print orientation is different for the lower one. So this lower panels print with that flat on the bed, and as it prints up, you go into any of these details, you'll see the law of 35, and you'll see all of the coin slots change over. When you put the coin slots in, they are ambidextrous, whatever the word is. They work both ways around, and they're identical when you kind of start to look that outside from outside perspective. The other thing that I was doing around no seams is looking where the best place is to cut. So where possible, I've cut everything along details or along the doors. So you can see there, you can't. It's the actual join is tucked in between that door. So there are some visible joints. As I said, they're impossible rules, but hey, we'll try. So you've got a couple ones here, but all the visible joints are right on the outside surface of the model. So it means that from just a cleaning off, a tiny little bit of filler and a sand off, and those disappear very, very quickly. What I've also done then is got the full doors. So when you put the doors on, what happens is the doors cover all the seam lines up. So that, if from a final print perspective, you end up with very, very, very little cleanup, and then the greeblies also cover a lot of the seams. So given that this is printed on a 250 bed, you can see there's very, very, very little cleanup to cover on there. What I've also done is use the doors effectively as part of the structural integrity of it. So the doors are a little bit thicker; they're about 6 mil thick. This is a simple model. There will be a complex model with all the doors open. I wanted to get some of the design principles in this first of all. So what happens is the doors fit in. They go into the chamfers really, so I've got the maximum amount of plastic in the door to grip in and pull in. If we want to, we can open those holes up and we can use heat inserts. I don't put heat inserts in by default, purely because it takes a certain amount of skill and practice to use them. And what I don't want is somebody to be printing a 8 or 10 hour print and then mess it up with a heat insert. However, I recognize that a lot of people do like heat inserts. So what I've tried to do with this is where we've got screws and bolts, we'll make it so that we can open the hole up a little bit if you want to drop heat inserts at a later date. So in theory with this, if you wish to, you could have these doors on heat inserts, and you could have different colored doors if you want to change from R5 to R2 without any kind of masking or having to do it over. So that's broadly the body. The body prints orientation. Again, if you zoom in, you can kind of see on the law of 35, but it prints with this on the bed. This one prints upright. Let me just see what that is. So you can see this one prints upside down, and then the bottom one prints upright. On the 500 mil one, it's exactly the same. You just don't have to join the individual components. The other thing that I've used a lot through the Mark IV is where I need supports, and I said, I try to remove supports as much as possible. I've used this method. So what I'm actually doing, let me see if I can get a view. Inspect sectional analysis. There we go. Is that one there? Just sort of drag onto something that insert. Where's that inspect section? There we go. Just pull that into there. There we go. So, on as you know, on R2, what you've got is you've kind of got this flat panel that goes straight up here with a 90-degree overhang. It's got to be really clean. So just to give you again a little bit of an insight into design principles, what I've done is it's got a 1 mil support structure that prints up to here. Then what I do is I chamfer in both the front and the back, just so that it creates a little bit of a break line, so we can get rid of that support. And then on the inside, behind that, the support carries on, but rather than doing that straight across and trying to get bridging, which gives us not quite as clean a finish, what I've then done is created sort of a 45-degree up and down with a little bit of a bridge at the top. So what that does is when you take that panel off, you get an absolutely perfectly clean line, and you get no bridging and no overhang. If you're absolutely obsessed, you can throw some filler in there. Honestly, I don't think it needs it. And if we look at traditional skin ones, you can have a little bit of a gap there anyway, but it's kind of your call that sits on that. And these panels, I snap out. I would recommend technically that you use an X-Acto knife, just kind of run it down there to loosen it. There's 2 tabs, 1 tab here and 1 tab here. They're all the same. You just snap them off and pop them off, and you end up with an incredibly clean kind of finish. Same with the hex ports. So all the models, all the different bits where you cannot avoid overhang, what I've done is really, analysis, there we go. Just edit that. I'm just going to move the cross section so you can see where so the hex port. Oops. I need somebody who can use Fusion. Anybody in the house? Let me have a look. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So the hex port's the same. It comes out, and again, it goes up and then it drops out at 35 degrees, so you don't get any overhang on the inside. So effectively, I've run this all the way through, so that the all of the panels, then once you pop them out, you can just pop the greeblies straight back in again. If we remove the greeblies, let's look. So all the pockets for the greeblies, they're all done at the law of 35. This is what I was saying about an obsession. This is ridiculous amount of time to actually go through and go, how am I going to model this pocket? How do I get it to print in one clean bit just up to there and then back out again, so that you end up with, the perfect skin, no overhangs, no drooping, but you can still manage to fit the greeblies in. And then the actual greeblies themselves, we've got to model them so they will then print at a 45-degree angle, so we get no layer lines. And when you start to look at the angles that sits inside these things, it can be absolutely mind-blowing. You're just constantly moving these things around until you go, well, I think I'm going to get a decent print out of that. And that goes for all of them. So similar with these little pockets, they print straight on the bed. So whatever orientation we've got on the print, that's how we print it. If you print it in other ways, I cannot be responsible for the fallout on how that kind of sits. And I said with these pockets, what we've done is taken out all of the masking. So let me just see if we can open the greeblies on that one. Hello, Fusion. Fusion's just having a moment. We'll just wait for Fusion. I bet. wonder if it's down to the fact that it's just dropped off Wi-Fi. Oh no, there we go. Work offline. There you go. It's woken up again. Now we're all good. I think we'll play. Right. Let's see if greeblies allowed. This is so the. If I just get rid of the fingers. So the side vents print, and I'll get rid of the blue plate. There we go. So the side vents print at a angle. I think that's the one that's flat on the bed. Once you've printed the side vents, the blue plate behind it prints straight up like that. It's got these 1mm supports that hold it up on there just to make sure it prints clean. And then what you've got is spaces where the fingers then drop in, and you can either glue or screw the fingers. I've got little screw holes in there for M3 screws that'll self-tap, or you could glue them together. So what you do is you print this out, paint your back plate. Once you paint your back plate, you drop your 4 fingers in, and again, you've got no real kind of masking to do, and you get really, really kind of clean prints. Similar thing with the side pockets. Exactly the same concept. The fingers, the blue plate goes in first, the fingers glue on top, and again, no masking. And the kind of thing repeats all the way through with the different greeblies. So all of the coloured parts you can literally just paint individually, and then you kind of assemble up. Okay. So that pretty much covers most of the stuff from the outside. You can kind of see how it all assembles and how it all goes together. The utility arm was an interesting one. These ones, they're printed with this flat on the bed, so they print upright like that. I would say I use 3D lac, which is a spray that you spray on the bed to give extra adhesion on the bamboo. I am contemplating putting some extra supports on these because I know it's quite hairy watching these things print up. They print beautifully okay for me with that extra adhesion, but I might just throw a little bit more support on there just so it's not as exciting for everybody in the room watching this thing kind of go around and thinking, is it going to stand up or is it not going to stand up? The utility arm holder, if I can find that, the panel, there it is. This was a part of note. Let me get rid of all the little bits so we can have a look at it. So this was another conundrum that spent probably far too long playing around with this particular one. I wanted to print, again, this is flat, so it prints up, it prints beautifully. The difficult bit on this is this little section here. So as it's everything else, I managed to get it to stack up. What I'd also done is brought the walls out so that you didn't have any support needed for the inside bit. So I got everything else is super clean. The one thing I did here is this overhang was unavoidable. So what I've done is I put these little support pieces in there. They do snap out, or you can use little snips to get rid of them, and then you just quickly run a bit of sand or a filer. Not sandpaper. Don't use sandpaper. A file. We use files. We don't use sandpaper anymore in this game. But no, so they were a design consideration without a doubt. What I'll cover now is, actually I might just cover it in this one. The other thing that I mentioned about is the print settings. So print settings and strength. So what I want to do is create strength inside and not everybody worry about what infill they would do. My personal view is that droids are aeroplanes, not tanks, when we 3D print them. So what I'm trying to do is make them as light as possible. One, it makes it a lot easier to carry. Second, it's a lot cheaper. Thirdly, it doesn't put as much stress on the build. That's not to say those that print 8, 9, 10 layers and 50% infill and they want something that feels like a tank, that's cool. But go into it open-eyed, because that is putting extra stress on all of the joints. It's putting extra stress on the whole build. It's also burning a lot more batteries. You're trying to shift it around. So both kind of work. What I wanted to do with this design is make sure that if you were coming to the hobby from fresh and you didn't know about where all the stress joints were and you just threw it on the bed, what you'll end up with is a really, really solid droid. Now, the story for this particular design feature started with Dave Ferreira. We're doing some work on the B2 body, and it was actually an induction speaker. So we wanted to put some induction speakers in the B2 body. And again, I got a little bit obsessed with reading about induction speakers. And the way induction speakers work is they kind of vibrate the middle to create your treble, and then they push the bass on the outside. So the ideal material is something that's solid to transmit that treble. But the outside, you want a bit of flex, so that actually what you want to do is get some bass on it. So we could print it at 100% infill, but what happens is for a piece that's this big to get your induction speaker working, what you end up doing is creating a very, very heavy part. So I said to Dave, let me have a play with this. And I said, I know what we can do actually is I bet I can build something on the inside so it prints solid circle where the induction kicks out and still allows you to do it 15% infill for the rest of it. So what I did is I modeled 0.2 millimeter gap. And the reason that works is all of your slices, as soon as they see a little gap inside the model, they go, that's a very important wall because you want to see that. I'm going to put layer lines all the way around it. So what happens then is you get this on the inside of your print. So all these are is 0.2 gaps. And then whatever you've got on the layer lines on the outside, it will fill those gaps in. What it gives us from a feature perspective. There we go. So you can see, so what there we go. Look at that. Does that work? Good. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So what we can do now is we can put supports or strengthens anywhere in the droid without actually then massively increasing the amount of filament we're using, the weight that we're using. So it allows us to strengthen all the bits that might be under duress. So what I've done with this one, and I'll just fire everything back up so we can see, is if you look at the shoulders, and we'll have a little peek inside with sectional analysis. So you can see there, those are all the 0.2 layer, 0.2 mil gaps. So that means that whole shoulder piece there, and that's got to take compression. That takes compression strength. What it does is it pretty much will print that solid just on that circle. But all the rest of the print will print at your, whatever, 15%. And then you've got to rebuild the same on here. From a design consideration perspective, it's quite complicated because you've got to cut all these things in, but what you want to do is leave the outer layers. So you want to leave a 1.2 millimeter gap between the outer wall and where this is. So there's quite a lot of work that goes on to something that you will never see, but actually it's there. And you'll see it when you start to print these things. So it's and if we flick onto the legs, I'll show you a little bit on the insides of the legs. Assuming I can get this wacky world of fusion to work. There's analysis. There we go. Insert, inspect, sectional analysis. There we go. Just click on that. Okay. So if we look at the legs, what I've done is this bit here is always quite weak. It can be weak. As long as it's printed flat on the bed, the walls give it a huge amount of strength. So I've never had one of these fail, but let's do belt and braces. So what we've now got is pretty much kind of a solid bit. So there's a solid circle. The print lines kind of print round and out, round and out, round and out, and then it goes right the way through to the main shoulder. So just a little bit of an example of where we've got that. Where's the little draggy line that we want to do? So the other thing is where with the Mark IV legs, what I've included is 6mm steel bars. So there's 6mm threaded bars that go right through the legs, and they actually go right through to the ankle. because on the Mark 1 and Mark 2, the ankles are glued onto the legs. So what you've got is steel that's going pretty much from the top of the shoulder right the way through to the legs. However, what we're using is square bolts to hold that steel in. So what that does, it creates compression or potential compression damage on the print. So what I've done then is I've used the 0.2 gaps to then generate extra infill where the nut gets tightened. So effectively, whoops, there we go. So if that makes sense, what you end up with is, and I'll just show you there. So you end up with some extra strengthened bits there. You end up with the strengthened bits at the other end where it kind of hits on there. I've strengthened all around the main hubs where that gets bolted through, and so again that gives us a lot of kind of compression strength and overall strength. The other thing that I've done with the legs, again, when on the Mark 2s and Mark 3s, you've got a bit of bridging on here and a bit of cleanup. So this has got, similar to what I showed you with the panel that comes out, it's got these little snap-out panels, and then the underside of that is that one that kind of goes up and goes back down again. So you get no overhang at all. So as you can see on the legs now, the leg assembly, let me go through the leg assembly. 4 legs, there we go. So you may have seen these videos, but what the leg assembly, what you've got is this is a single print. There's no supports now. Previously, we had some supports. It prints this side flat on the bed, and it's got all of that extra strength and bits and stuff in there. But I've also started to put these slide joints in. So once you've printed the leg, where you want the ankle, which I've no idea where that's gone now. Is it that one there? There we go. So this ankle here literally slides in. So once you've printed this, you can drop your square bolts into there, which hold the steel that's going through it, and that slides in to there, and that's pretty much then your whole ankle assembled. The bolt arrangement, I'll just quickly show you the bolt arrangement. So I've done 3 bolt arrangements so that you've got a nice triangle that all pulls it together. There's 2 at the top. Those 2 at the top, they go right the way through up to here. So they go way past where you're actually attaching. I've strengthened these bits here and added a few little bits of extra support. So you've got 3 bolts and they go right the way through to hold the ankle on. So that ankle is not coming off. On the test pieces that I did before I came here, I removed this ankle. I just glued these 2 pieces together. So I removed this ankle, took the steel bolts out, propped it up on a brick just on the edge, a brick on the edge, and then I just stood on it a bit and jumped up and down. And so it carried my not inconsiderable weight. And then I kept jumping up quite a bit until eventually I did manage to snap it, but it did actually support my weight without any of the steel or anything else that's in there. So they are very, very, very robust. But with as soon as you throw the steel in there, then we've got a pretty solid kind of mechanisms all together. From an assembly perspective, what I'm doing, and I'll write this up anyway. The challenge we always have is the ankle bracelet, because what you often do is you assemble it all together and say, "Oh, shoot, we've missed the ankle bracelet." I think most of my builds I've done that. So what I've done on the ones that I'm just doing at the moment is effectively I glue these 2 pieces together so they become one. I use the rods to hold that together, but I don't put the ankle on. So effectively it's kind of like that. You may have seen my graveyard picture that I posted on Facebook, because what I found is that these rods are great for sticking in the ground. So when you're painting and you want to dry it, you can just lob them in the ground and they can just stand there. It looks like an R2D2 graveyard. Hey, it's an extra cool feature. I may do a RIP greebly that you can stick on there for Halloween. We'll see. but you know that once you've done that, and you can put the bolts on here, here, and here. What I may do, well, I think I probably will do, is I make just a little cutout in the ankle so you can leave a bolt on that one. Because what that means then is I can bolt this up, glue it, and leave this one bolted in so that it keeps it all together until you get the ankle on. And the reason that's important is the assembly for the bracelet is once this is glued. If you've got any sanding or filling that you want, filing and filling that you want to, you pop that one in there. Make sure you've got it smooth so you're ready to paint, and then you've painted the anklet bracelet silver, slide it on, and then do the final assembly and final glue. I'm probably still going to glue the ankles on, just probably because I can do, but I think they'd work okay as the bolts anyhow. So that's where are we? So that's how the leg kind of assembles together. And then what I've done with the greeblies, if I can find the greeblies, although on that side, I don't need to find them. They're over there. Look. Again, no masking, so these come separately now, all printed separately. So the assembly for these, which works nicely, I like these, is move that one up to there. So you can assemble the full ankle. You can also glue this plate here in situ. Similar to a lot of the other builds that I've done, what I'm using is M3 10mm set screws or grub screws, so the headless screws. The reason I use those is with PETG, the gluing PETG is the harder bit of it. So if you use two-part adhesive and stuff, you can use solvents. There's various things that will glue it. But actually, if we use set screws, it gives us something to bed the glue into. So what I tend to use is two-part epoxy and set screws, and then the holes have got ridges on the inside. So it acts kind of like mortar, and it fills a gap. So actually, you've got a physical grip when you glue these things in with set screws, and bags of set screws are quite cheap. So you'll see on the inside of here, there's ridging. That's not threading. That's literally so you can dump a screw in with some epoxy resin, and they will hold together. So the assembly with these work is must be better. Look fine. So you glue this. You can glue this on. You can paint all this all together once you've done that. The cylinder, the middle cylinder, you paint blue. There's two set screw holes there, so you pop the middle cylinder in. Once that middle cylinder's in, you've got two more set screw holes, one there and one on the other side. And similar to the ankle cover, these actually then just slide in. So they slide in on a, you can see it there. They slide in on a little square connector. So once they're in with the screws, they're not moving anywhere. Without glue, you can't pull them out because they're kind of fitted in solid. So again, we've had it at cons where you can kind of pull these things out, or they drop out through vibration. So they're not going anywhere when you've done that. Once that's together, your last piece is you can drop this in, and there's some holes for that one when that one pops in. I think I've got there's that one there. Anyway, this CAD's not got it on there. I've got the file somewhere. There's basically another. We can see it there. There we go. Yeah. So there's another set screw that fits into there, and that last piece drips in. So once you've done all of that, you end up with a very, very solid build. Similar with the sides. The sides are doing exactly the same. These side details. So painted two parts, push them together, and away you go. On the horseshoes, I passed the the horseshoes going around. Past the horseshoes going around, so that the horseshoe prints in this orientation. So again, 45 degrees, get no layer lines. These are always a nightmare because however resolution you put them at, you always end up with layer lines. So we've got rid of those. And these print beautifully. For the long legs, So the ones that are about 15, 16 mil longer for 2 to 3 to 2s, which I always include, you don't necessarily need them. These do fit on the bamboo. They fit on the bamboo like literally diagonally. So from farthest corner to farthest corner. And you have to drop them down 0.2 millimeters into the bed and chop that off to fit them in. You don't see it, but they're literally at the tolerance of the bamboo on the 250p. So again, you can print all of these into single prints. I said at the beginning, no masking. With these, you've got these horrible details here, you've got these details here, and you've got the details here. I forgot it in here somewhere. Boost along. Let me have a look, see if it's in there. Trying to find. No, it's not there. Is it a simple race? See how organised I am with all of this CAD? Must be. Is it on that one? Let's have a. No, I'll find the CAD. Anyway, I'll be releasing the files very shortly. What I've done on the one that I'm just playing at the moment, again, it may be an update to these, is effectively cutting this section here as a separate print. This silver plate here is a single plate that prints flat on the bed, and it fits onto a little finger that's poking out of these. So there's a little finger, the silver plate fits on the finger, and then this will fit on the wire on the end of it. So they assemble up, and it means that you don't have to paint that. That's a separate piece. And then on the very end of these two silver details are actually inserts, so they just slide in. So effectively, what you can do is you can print these, and this middle section separately, and then you assemble it together. They're already painted. And I'm just working on the CAD for this as well here. So once I've done that, there'll be an option on there. If the option's really good and we like it, we'll use it as a permanent one, and I'll archive the others. So what you effectively can then do is print this into a number of pieces, paint them separately, and assemble them. It works better than masking, because however you do with masking, you always end up with a little bit of bleed or something that annoys us. So we don't get that beautiful, perfect factory fresh R2D2 before we throw mud all over it and beat the hell out of it to weather it. So, but that's really to try and make all of these things as easy as possible. The other one is the horseshoes. So again, these were a delight to do, but we've got these printing now at 45 degrees with supports. And they print beautifully. They really do. They're just fantastic. And of course, all of the details on the back now I can include with the law of 35. The obsession that I had with some of these greeblies, particularly this long booster and these things, was complete madness. So I did the same technique on all of them, but what I ended up doing was, where we've got all of these individual circles at different sizes, I chopped them all into little slices, and then every single circle I applied the law of 35, so that where it got down to, I'll show you just on here, but where it got down to the bit that you can't see that's underneath, I do a 35-degree little teardrop, so that you can always print it on the bed, and it will print clearly. And did the same even on this detail here, and on all of these gears. The gears teeth. If we look here, what you've actually got is you've got the evenness of the teeth as you'd expect all the way through. The moment any of these start to drop below 35 degrees or 65 degrees, what I then do is force them back into it, so they become slightly less consistent as they get to here, and then they drop into a 35. So these things that we've got that are posting around here, every single one of those teeth has been remodeled so we don't get more than a 65-degree overhang, so that it'll print beautifully. The complexity of these, though, it's not just about the overhang that you've got on there. It's also, if you look on the ones that are passed around, I'm just trying to think. Okay, let me see if I've got a strut. There we go. I'll show you on the CAD. Actually, it'd probably be easier. So once you've made it so it could print flat on the bed like that at 65-degree overhang, what you've then got to do is get rid of these layer lines and bring it at 45 degree as well. That's when it starts to blow your mind, because you've done 35 degrees so it prints flat, and now you're shifting it up to 45. Once you shift it up to 45, you hit a problem, because when you hit at 45, anything that's smaller than the previous print, so this is big, this is small, it's quite happy it can sit on. It's got something to support it onto. When it starts to go from small to big, that's when we've got a bit more of a problem, because what it needs to do is have something to hang off. Now, when it goes from small to big, what you can do is you can teardrop it at 35-degree angle on there, and it'll print off whatever's beneath it. You all with me now? Good, that's good, right. And then what you do is you hit something that just comes out straight here. So what you've got to do then is put a tiny bit of support that's printing at 45 degrees here, but 35 degrees there, so we know it'll work, we think. And once you've got 45 and 35, that'll print at the angle. That'll give us enough support there so it can print the bottom edge off this, and then you can just clip that out when you want to. So these become quite good fun to kind of model. And that just means that we can lob them on the bed and we can print them really, really simply. These things were equally a nightmare. There is no way that I was going to print this on the end of here. And the reason for that wasn't because I couldn't do it. It was go back to I don't want any stepping. So if I print this at 45-degree angle, this one is about a 13 or 14-degree angle, and you get stepping lines. So we're not into stepping lines, because that means sanding, and sandpaper's banned now. So so what we want to do, is kind of get this flow. So exactly the same as we did before. We create little teardrops, 35-degree beneath here, made sure that it prints all the way up, and then we step it out with these little bits. So a combination of those stepping out plus the 35-degree plus the 45-degree angle means all of this prints really, really nicely and cleanly. And then when it gets up to this bit, I can print this out at 45-degree angle, use that to lift up all of these bits, and then these bits will print up nicely at 35-degree angle, going into a full circle, and it look very, very pretty. Yeah? Good. Okay. Then and then the strut head, I've just done that as a separate piece that you can just pop on there, through a 35-degree Laura 35 on there, so that prints out nice and clean. And then these two strut pieces will just fit back in, and these little bits of plastic will snap off, so you can use them for mixing two-part adhesive, because you'll use quite a bit of that through here. I haven't got rid of that yet. So that's pretty much it, what I wanted to cover, but pretty much. But it goes back to the 10 impossible rules. The law of 35, no stepping, no visible joints, no sanding, no masking, no special print settings, no multi-part assembly and built-in strength. That's what we set out to do with the Mark IV. I'm delighted we kind of got probably 80% there. There's still a little bit of work to do for you, because otherwise it wouldn't be building. It would just be printing droids, and we all like to carry on building, and we like to paint what we do. My next challenge is now the complex body. Along with the feet drives. I am doing them all. Just for clarity, I get asked a lot, all of the parts work together. So if you've got a Mark III dome with a Mark IV body, or a Mark IV body with a Mark II legs, all of those are interchangeable. The actual body, you can't interchange greeblies and things. In theory, on the legs, they are interchangeable, but I'm not building that into it. You know, I've had a few people that have been doing Mark III legs, and they're saying, can I have these parts, and will they fit? Yes, they will fit, because they're pretty much the same design. They're not necessarily designed to fit, so you can have a little bit play around with it. So they do all kind of interchange. But my next challenge is to do the Mark IV complex body, similar to what I've done with the complex dome. So we've got panels opening. I'm intending to do a lot of panel opening on there. So every panel effectively will do something. I'm not quite designed exactly what it is, but it's also in concept. I want them to be modular, so the behind piece you can slot in different things. I know we've got various designs for where the arms go in, so I've got some interesting thoughts on there. Probably before I do the complex body, I want to tackle the feet. So there's a couple of things with the feet. I think just as a bit of a go through the thought process. One, I really like the hub drive wheels. You may have seen Stefan's got one over there. I've got a box full now, and a box full of drivers. So I'm going to have a little play with those because they're nearly as affordable and nearly as cheap as some of the other ones. They're brushless, so they're very compatible with battery power. They don't kind of eat all your battery power. They're very, very quiet, very silent, and they're incredibly torquey. So lovely, lovely, lovely drives. What I want to do is put suspension in the wheels, in the drives, because when we did some event at Pinewood have built this stage made out of little wooden slats. So they've constructed this stage that's designed to disintegrate droids as they drive across it. It's quite amazing, actually. So it goes through like that, and then bits fall off. So, but we get that with concrete and various kind of surfaces. So, and the thought process is that, and I'll probably say it wrong, but there's a rubber called Sobrathon, something like that. It's basically this rubber that they use in speakers to dampen speakers, and it's a bit like a memory foamy rubber, but it's designed as a dampener. So the concept is, what we do is we have a foot drive that you can just separate. So what you've got is you've got the main drive, and you've got a casing, and you've got a layer of Sobrathon that sits between it. The problem with dampening, like cars, is dampening is not designed to carry weight. It's designed to dampen. So what you've then got is you've got 4 holes in there that you can put springs in. So what you end up doing is your foot drives will be on springs with a layer of Sobrathon. The springs are designed to take the weight of the droid, and the Sobrathon will take the vibration. So it'll take the dampening. And what that means then is from a maintenance perspective, you drop it out, drop 4 more springs in, put another layer of Sobrathon, you can do that. If you want to adjust the weight of your droid, adjust the weight of your droid. If you want to put a big battery in there, or you want to add extra stuff in it and it adjusts the weight of the droid, you can then put it out, put 4 more springs in it. So very, very simple to maintain. But I think if we can get some degree of suspension on droids, it makes the whole thing a lot more stable, but also kind of when it drives around, it looks a lot more natural, a lot more smooth. So just a little bit of a focus on what we're doing, what I want to do next on the drives. What I don't want to do next is documentation and instructions and bombs, because it bores the hell out of me. But I will be doing that. That's got to come from the legs. We've done the main body, and we'll get there. So I think I'm nearly at time, but we've got a couple of minutes for. I've got 5 minutes for questions, comments, arm waving, or you can throw things at me.
What did you do for any wire management in the droid?
Brilliant question. A bit like the Mark IV dome, there's a whole bunch of, actually, why am I talking when I could just show you on the CAD? Simple body. Let's have a quick look. So on the inside, if I can pull it back up, where's the frame? So what you've got here is you've got legs, you've got cable holes here. These are 2-3-2 manuals, so you can put legs in different positions. However, the cable holes go, and we've got this, which gives all of the extra strength. The shoulders, the cables come in through here. And then there's loads of these kind of things, which is for cable ties. So effectively what you do is run your cables through here. You've got cable ties, holes, grooves here. So both the legs run in. They will run along to there, so you can pull them all the way here. From the dome, this is a universal slip ring mount, so you can use whatever slip ring you want. The cable runs through, it goes again to these legs, and then at the end of these legs, if I can show, there's a little cable tie route. So, and then there's a slot at the bottom. So the idea is you can have your whole electronics board on there, you can cable tie it at the top. All the cables are going to come out here and here for the head, for the sound, and for the legs. It's all managed, and then it will, you can have a universal board. So whatever board you want to design, once you've all started to do CAD, you can then just slot that in there and use that. So all the cable mounts and everything are built into there. So I do a lot of these on the main dome as well, just holes, just literally so we can put cable ties everywhere, because otherwise you end up printing things that stick on there. Good question though. Any more questions? We're almost at time. Apologies for boring you. Okay, I think we're done. We're done.
Thank you all very much. Give us a few minutes, we'll get set up for the next one. Thank you.
Well, your concept on those 2 million.